Hi everyone, today we are pleased to welcome Smriti Bhatt, co-founder and chief operating officer of AdvantageClub.ai, a global AI-powered employee engagement rewards and recognition platform. Smriti brings a strong blend of product, customer engagement, and HR tech leadership, building solutions that help organizations better recognize, reward, and support their people in meaningful ways. With her background in technology and employee engagement, she offers a practical lens on how organizations operate and shape their strategies in the space as they move into 2026. Today, we will discuss what's changing in 2026 and explore how AI, including agentic AI, is influencing the way organizations recognize, support, and engage their people. Welcome, Smriti.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy New Year to you, and
Happy.
welcome 2026 with a wonderful conversation with you.
Thanks, Trupti, and really excited for this upcoming conversation.
That is great. So, Smriti, before I start with my questions, because I see that you have a versatile experience, I would like to know about your journey.
Sure. Well, from an academic perspective, I have done my master's from UCLA, post which I worked with Microsoft in their Redmond office for a few years. And me and my co-founder Saurav, we were both working there, and we've always wanted to start something of our own, and that was always, I think, one of the common things about us, which also kind of drew us towards each other. So we used to maintain like this Excel sheet of ideas which we thought we will eventually implement and create a venture into. And I think Advantage was probably the 108th or 109th idea. I don't even remember that now. But ironically, this was not the company we wanted to start. We wanted to start something in the travel business. We almost
Wow.
conceptualized it. We had a website ready and we were about to launch it. And then this idea just kind of fell in our lap because, we were both working with Microsoft, and as Microsoft employees in the US, we used to get a lot of benefits. We also at that point realized that people in India or Southeast Asia or Middle East in Microsoft don't have such benefit structures. And eventually, after digging in deep, we realized that this is because there are no proper employee benefit platforms in this part of the world. And because we were users of those benefits ourselves and we kind of understood this from a customer standpoint, we thought this is a large disruptive space. And if people in other countries work equally hard, if not harder, why should their benefits not be at par, right? So with that idea, we came back to India and we started Advantage. Back then, it was called Work Advantage. We later rebranded to AdvantageClub.ai. But Advantage was actually started as an employee perks and benefits platform. And our idea was that we will tie up with all the amazing brands in the country and put it all on the platform and bring the best of the best offers and benefits for all employees across Asia and Middle East. It started off well, but slowly and consequently, what started happening is that while there were some recognition platforms in the country, it was a new space at that time. There were one or two providers, but most of those providers were not up to par. Like, people were not really using them. And we, not being a recognition provider, we were just an employee discounting platform. There was more usage on our discounting platform than the places where companies had deployed recognition portals and people had actually money to spend, but they were still not spending. So a lot of companies started. At that point in our perks platform, we had a small wallet where you would get cashbacks, etc. So a lot of companies started loading money in that wallet instead of putting it on their recognition platforms, which were de facto, because they were like, this works better, so let's start moving money here. And that's how our kind of becoming a rewards platform, that journey started. I think back in 2017-18 is when we started getting more and more budgets, and when we reached a certain scale, we completely revamped ourselves to an end-to-end employee experience platform, where our ideology became that every organization spends certain amount of money on their employees beyond salary. It could be in the form of recognition, incentives, it could be in the form of moments that matter, in the form of performance rewards, could be wellness or any sort of flexible benefits like learning and development, etc. Our job was to bring all those initiatives under one umbrella and let, through a digitized mechanism, employees pick and choose their own choice of awards while maintaining compliance into what organizations really want. And then there was a software layer on top of it where if you wanted to drive recognition, managers would have their budgets, the whole workflow will be automated, and a pure technology layer was built on top of it. And that's how we kind of expanded over the years from being just an employee discount platform to an end-to-end, flex and well-being and recognition and overall experience platform. And so this journey has been really interesting because what we really started off to do and what we've become today are two very, very different things. But I think it was the natural progression of the venture. As and when we got feedback from the customers, we kept incorporating it on our tool, and eventually it became like this Maha tool of anything to everything related to engagement for employees.
So, Smriti, before I ask you any other question, I love the way, you're explaining about Advantage because I can see the excitement. I can still feel the passion around it. I can still understand that, how you've started, how you have grown. And I see that, in your, continuous, you can say conversation or introduction about Advantage that, how passionately you guys, started the whole course. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you for the same. I mean, I would like to understand, how does it feel, when you've started in 2016, the whole, reward system. That time, the word was different, things were evolving, and now it is 2026. The things haven't changed. So, what do you feel? How do you
Uh,
see it?
so so I think it's not just been a progression in terms of us as a portal. It's also been a progression in terms of how employees have moved across these years, and how people feel about workplaces in general. Like back in 2016, I think getting a recognition was a privilege. Today, being recognized in your organization is a necessity. So that entire mentality switch has happened, and a lot of it has been because of the generational switch. Also, we have Gen Zs, and that has also kind of changed people's thought processes towards how generations have thought about their workplaces and what they expect from their organizations. But 2026 is very, very different compared to, say, 2016, right? So past one decade has completely revamped the way the world thinks about uh, what they feel when they go to work. Like, I remember when I was in Microsoft, there was this person who was there for like 10 years, 15 years in the company. And then one day he like randomly gets up in the morning and he resigns. And his wife was a doctor in the US, which is a big deal, right? She also shut down her practice. And they said that we're gonna move to New York and we're gonna start a restaurant. And I was like, after 15 years of, and he was one of the top developers in Microsoft at that point in time. And I was really surprised that, why would you take that plunge? And it was very odd to everybody because I think back in 2016, that's how we all used to think about it. I mean, working towards your passion or really doing what you want or wanting something beyond salary from an organization used to be a huge privilege. And at that point, he said this one line to me, which stuck with me, forever, is that if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like going to work, and it could happen one or two mornings in a month, but if it's happening every morning, and while you're really good at your work but you don't want to go there, and it is not related to the organization, that means you're in the wrong field. So in that case, you should probably switch your field. But if you wake up in the morning and you don't want to go to work, even though you love your work, but you hate your team, then you should switch your company. And that was very odd, like a decade ago, right? People never used to think like that. But today, this is like, very status quo. I don't feel like I belong in this organization, so why should I work here? Sure, the salary is good, sure, the pay package is good, but I don't feel recognized for my work, so why should I work here? And that's become very normal now, that people leave because they feel the managers are not recognizing them, they're not getting credit for the work where credit is due. They don't feel, they don't feel like it's my place to work in. And that has been probably the stark mentality shift in the past 1 decade. And 2026 is going to reflect all of this in whatever organizations want to implement for their employees.
What trends in rewards and recognition do you think will define 2026 for HR leaders?
So I think now that AI is the big buzzword, I think I need to start from there. We used to say AI is the future, AI is the future. Now we are in a zone where AI is the present. It is here, and we're using it in our day-to-day lives. So while of course generative AI and all of that has been there since past couple of years, agentic AI is, I think, will be one of the defining moments in 2026. I feel, so let me talk about how different internal tools versus external tools are usually for people, right? In your real world, you have people not googling things anymore. Like, you have everything, you ask ChatGPT, you get your pictures enhanced via Gemini. Everything in your day-to-day life, more or less, you're using AI somewhere or the other. Now you look at tools which you use in your companies. There's a stark difference, right? They are still those 10-year-old, decade-old, purane zamane ke, tools which, where loading a page takes probably 35 to 50 seconds, and it's really annoying. So
Yeah.
if if say for example your outside tools are equivalent to using smartphones, the tools you're using inside organizations are equivalent to using landlines. So I think that is one place where not just organizations but even technology providers need to upgrade themselves, especially now that we have people who are using such advanced tools outside of work. Their expectation would be to get at least half of that inside of work, right? So agentic AI will definitely become a defining moment for everybody. And while agentic is the future, it will start kind of becoming a norm for everybody. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But I think that is going to be the most forefront of every, maybe HR leaders' priorities in 2026. Secondly, because of this generational gap, which I talked about, which has become like from the past decade or so, today's Gen Z does not want like a one size fits all solution, right, for everybody. Everybody wants hyper personalization, everybody wants things which are relevant to them. So hyper personalization is also going to become really important for any solution you are giving from any provider in 2026. And from a recognition standpoint, while recognition has always been very culture led in the past, right? So uh, when you think about rewards and recognition, you think about, okay, if somebody is following my cultural values, then they deserve an award. Recognition is also going to move more from just being a culture led program to being more performance led, being more general, being more focused on moments that matter, going beyond rewards just related to culture. And flexible benefits will also start becoming more and more prevalent in 2026. So these are the three trends, I think, which primarily will start changing, especially when HR leaders think about tools or programs they want to deploy for their employees.
Sounds perfect. I mean, AI is changing the world, so nothing like it. How have employee expectation around reward and recognition changed in the last few years?
So, well, I just talked about Gen Zs, right? So today's generation, unlike our grandfather's generation, they are not working to, say, build a base for themselves. Like our grandfather's generation used to work for roti ka makan, that story used to exist, and people used to work that, okay, we have a good life and we will give our children a better life. Our fathers or parents' generation eventually became in a structure where, okay, you're not struggling to survive, it's not for survival anymore, but now you're building wealth for your future generations. Today's generation has both, right? So neither do they need to generate wealth, nor do they need to, I mean, worry about creating more generational wealth for their futures. And because their parents and their one generation above has worked so hard, they mostly are in the mode that why do you have to work so hard for yourself? We've already done most of that work for you. So that entire reason for working has completely changed for this generation. Like, if I ask this question to, say, my generation or a generation above, why do you want to work? Majority answers will be because I want to earn money. But you ask Gen Z's this question, you will get 20 types of answers. And it's very interesting because I keep asking this question to Gen Z's in my organization. And sometimes they come up with answers like, I want to work because I don't want to be bored at home. I want to work because, I like it when there is a purpose led work which I'm doing and it's creating some impact, and I can see that impact live in front of my eyes. So mostly for this generation, recognition, getting credit for the work done, all of this becomes more important because money is no longer that deciding factor anymore for them. And that becomes important for organizations to incorporate in their total reward strategy, because now you're not just rewarding people for money, you are rewarding people for doing good jobs and giving that right recognition. So your recognition needs to be at the right time, it needs to be purpose driven, and it needs to also reflect the impact which the employee has really generated for you. And like I mentioned earlier, it's no longer a privilege, right? So our grandfather's generation, if you get recognized in front of 30 people, it's a huge deal. But today, if you don't recognize people for doing their work, it's more like you start thinking, why am I even working here? It's become a bare necessity for everybody. So it needs to be instant. Our maybe a decade ago, people were okay waiting for their appraisals, waiting for the entire year to be told that, hey, you did this great, and here's a bonus for it. Nobody has the time and energy to wait for an entire year anymore. So those even quarterly appraisals feels too long for people to be recognized. So it needs to be much more frequent. And recognition also, I think, for today's generation is also about visibility. So they want to, you know be showcased in front of other people. They want it to be more social in nature. They will be the first ones posting it on LinkedIn that I got recognized and all of that. They would love it if their Slack channel like broadcasts it in front of the entire organization. People are like liking, commenting, complimenting. They love all that attention, right? So it also needs to be social, because if I tell great job done to a Gen Z in private, great, they will like it. But if I applaud it in front of the entire organization, they will love it. So that also becomes important when you're looking at today's generation in terms of recognition programs.
So Smriti, I mean, I've been asking this question with everyone because since I've started this whole series, we have been talking about Gen Zs. So every leader has their own perspective. Every leader comes up with a different mindset. Somebody says that we are trying to match up with them. Some people says that yes, it should happen, but a lot of patience required because sometimes they become a little more demanding. What is your take on it? It's a out of syllabus question, but just want to understand, what do you think about it? What do you think that Gen Zs are more, demanding these days, or, they're going right?
I don't think they're demanding. I just think their expectations from life are very different than what our expectations from life are. Like, if I had everything I need, then why am I working, right? One, what I need in life defines how hard I'm willing to work for it. And even if you look at money, right? Money is a means to an end. If if my goal is to, say, buy a Ferrari, then I will have to earn way more money to meet that goal. But if my goal is to maybe have a nice apartment where I can party with my friends, and I don't even have to buy the apartment, like I can rent it and I can afford the rent, I can afford the food and the party items and the liquor and everything, and I can afford the clothes I want to buy, I can afford the maybe accessories I want to buy, then it becomes a means to an end, and I already have that means to achieve that end. So then, if I'm working, there needs to be another reason as to why I'm motivated to work. And that's why I don't think they're demanding. I just think there's a understanding mismatch between why we used to work versus why they work.
They
And
were.
sometimes people don't understand why they're doing this. So I think as a leader, you need to identify what motivates the person to actually work and then align your strategy around that motivation. You cannot change somebody else's motivation. You cannot tell them that no, this is the wrong motivation, this is why you should be working. That expectation only is wrong. So it's very easy to blame people and say ki inko kuch nahi aata, they're too full of themselves, etc. But it's harder to sit and think that okay, they're smart, they will give a good ROI, but what do they need? Give them that and motivate them furthermore. So the onus doesn't lie on the Gen Z, the onus actually lies on the leadership to make the environment more viable for them. Because you cannot like shy away from this fact forever, because they are the future generation and they will be working. You cannot keep employing millennials forever, right? So if you have to continue your organization, you have to adapt to their needs.
That's good. So, in your view, what's the difference between rewards and employees, feel, and rewards that actually motivate performance? Because as we are talking about the motivation, so what do you feel?
So one, rewards need to be extremely timely. Like I said, gone are the days when you're waiting for quarterly or annual appraisals. um, to make people actually feel motivated about uh, you know kind of not motivated about performance, but to actually make people feel motivated and perform better, you also have to give them rewards which are more personalized and they have like a lot of choices to choose from. Like for example, if somebody gives me say a gym membership today as a reward, it's completely useless to me because I have a very tight schedule. I don't have time to go to the gym. I would rather maybe get something which is like a membership where I can do yoga trainers, or I can get a personal nutritionist or a dietitian who can help me with my daily needs, right? So everybody has their own choices and you have to give them enough choices for that reward also to be relevant. Otherwise, that reward is as good as like giving somebody a pressure cooker. I mean, I already have two cookers at home, I get another cooker, it doesn't make any difference in my life. So let them choose what they want. And I will repeat that social aspect crazily motivates people on performance. Like it's funny, right? We run a lot of rewards in our organization as well, because we're obviously a rewards and recognition program. So there are some contests I run for different team members. Like for example, there is a sales team contest which we run, which is probably, and I'm talking about the sales team because they get incentives on the revenue they make, right? They make way more incentives than that, $100, $50 reward which they get. But for some reason, everybody works towards that $50, $100 reward as well, in terms of the weekly contests which we run. And they feel happier about that instead of what they feel when they get those incentives. So it's all about, I think, because it's so social, and then you're like showcased as one of the best people or the best performers in the organization in front of everybody. It really elevates the value, even though monetarily it's very small. But money does not motivate there. It's the social aspect of it, and that the fact that there are 50 people coming to you and congratulating to you online, offline, everywhere after that becomes a huge deal. Social aspect also becomes important. And lastly, I think transparency also motivates people. A lot of times, if we are running recognition programs and people don't know why others are getting recognized, that will become more of a demotivator rather than a motivator. Because then you start thinking that okay, this person doesn't deserve it, or there's a bias, or the manager just did it, or their manager is better than my manager because they reward and my manager doesn't reward. So there needs to be clear policies set as to who gets a reward, what's the criteria, and that transparency also helps further motivate more people that okay, this person followed XYZ protocols, therefore they got recognized. If I do the same, I will also get recognized. So transparency also becomes a very big motivating factor when you have clear policies set for people.
Wow. So you have to look for so many indicators, to reward people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about employee well-being. We have been now and then, we have been hearing about well-being of employees, how, what kind of experience companies are giving to the employees. So workplace well-being has become a strategic priority for everyone. What new approaches are we seeing, especially in 2026, that go beyond traditional benefits?
So, I think well-being before COVID and well-being after COVID are two very, very different things. Well-being before COVID was एक एनुअल हेल्थ चेकअप कैंप करा लेते हैं ऑफिस में. People will come, get jabbed, and okay, be done with it, right? And maybe if you're an organization of 1,000 people and 100 people show up, it's a success. So that was well-being pre-COVID. Well-being post-COVID is one split across various areas of well-being itself. So now you as an organization first and foremost really want your employees to be healthy. Employees also really want to be healthy because COVID has seen so much of death and destruction and illness, and now also we have so many viruses which keep going on, and I don't think the viruses are even ending. We keep seeing new strains every now and then. Well-being has actually become a priority, not just for employers but also for employees themselves. So now organizations want to create well-being structures around all four pillars of well-being: physical, mental, financial, social. There's also a fifth pillar, spiritual, which is debatable. It's to each their own. Like mostly organizations don't opt for it because it doesn't, you can't be like, you can't standardize it across people. But physical, mental, financial, social are very status quo. So now organizations are kind of creating their programs associating with each of these four pillars, that how do I cater to all these four requirements. And again, flexibility becomes core here as well, because you want people to pick and choose their own benefits. If you are running, say, an OPD program, and you are running it say with one of the OPD providers, they might have 100 maybe doctors associated with them, or 1,000 doctors associated with them. But if that doctor who is in my neighborhood and I've been going to that doctor since 10 years is not in that app, then I will not use it, right? Because doctor is a very personal thing. That is, I go to a specific ENT, I go to a specific gynecologist. I will not change that just because my organization has given me an app जिसमें कोई नए doctors हैं. So organizations have also started realizing that if you're giving, say, a benefit, you have to create a multi-partner strategy, and that's what we have also done in terms of well-being. Instead of creating our own well-being program, we aggregated all the well-being providers in the market. Let people choose, let people pick and choose what they want, because well-being has become so important and so personal that a random doctor with a random lab center will not work for me anymore. So flexibility in terms of giving choices has also become very important. And I think now wellness is no longer just like a tick in the box. If I am running a wellness program and I see 30% adoption, it is a problem. Like, unlike pre 2020, where 10%, 20% was a great outcome, now if you're at 30%, it's a big problem. And ideally, organizations want to reach to at least 80, 90% adoption to call it a successful wellness program for employees.
So for that engagement, like, what do you think, that how much you guys can contribute? Like,
Hmm.
is it the organization who needs to contribute, or is it you, as a company who's providing the rewards, needs to contribute?
So it has to be both, right? There's an expectation we have from an organization as well. Our job is to bring every solution or every provider under the sun for an employee to pick and choose, so that nobody comes back and says that वो मेरे घर के बगल वाला doctor नहीं है, yeah, I go to only Lalpat Labs, why is this not here? So for example, just giving you an example, that this is what is important as a platform, that you need to ensure that every type of gym, every type of uh, you know you can't do every, but like at least majority, as much as you can do, whatever is available in the market, you aggregate it all together and you give that choice to the employee. Second, it needs to be very seamless to use also. If people have to download my app, then they have to download another app, and then they have to do another booking, and then they have to do like 5 6 steps, then they will not use it. So integrating with more and more providers is required on our end, and that's what we do. That we try to ensure that if I have to get a, say, FitPass ka membership, I don't have to download their app. I can just go and activate it on my app itself. So it's deeply integrated with another provider, so that you don't have to worry about downloading 10 apps or going to 5 logins or so on and so forth. Third thing which we need to do is, again, to drive adoption, and here we need the corporate's help, is communication. So don't just communicate, like over communicate. It needs to go over and over and over again to an employee for them to really realize that they have this benefit. So I remember, I think 10 years ago when we were running this perks program, I met, I think, somebody very senior in the marketing and Max Healthcare. And they became a partner, a very long term partner, and they're still a very good partner, which is why I'm giving an example. We also run benefits for them. बट बैक देन वो मेंटालिटी होती थी कि हाँ मेरे पास सारे कॉर्पोरेट्स हैं, आई हैव ऑल द कॉर्पोरेट्स. सो दे सेड आई हैव अडोबी, आई हैव दिस, आई हैव दैट, आई हैव concentrics etc. And I asked them a simple question. I said, अगर मैं concentrics के ऑफिस के बाहर एक जन को खड़ा करा दूं लंच ब्रेक में, एंड whoever is coming in and going out, I asked them this question कि आपको मैक्स हेल्थ केयर में क्या बेनिफिट मिलता है, कैन यू गिव मी अ गारंटी that at least, not even 100%, at least 50% people will know कि आपकी पार्टनरशिप है और आपको ये बेनिफिट मिलता है. You can't, because just sending that one mailer does not really do your job here. So over communication and constant information is required, because that one mail can be missed by everybody. There are 100,000 employees, anybody can miss it. So communication becomes very key, which is where we need the organization support to help us with standees or branding or banners, or even sending reminder mailers. While we send our own, we also need some support from the organization to whitelist our domains. And then of course, through our AI module itself, you can do smart nudges. Like if there are certain, and this we used to do even 10 years ago when AI was not a thing, we used to have a smart machine learning algorithm running in our apps, that if I enter an area, say I enter a mall, and there are maybe, say, there's a gym which is partnered with Advantage inside the mall or in the vicinity of the mall, I will get a notification on my phone that this is within 500 meters of you. So reminding people at the right place at the right time at the right moment can be achieved by technology, and that is something which, as a provider, it's our responsibility. And lastly, tracking, like tracking to the teeth where we are, how much utilization we've reached. It's been a quarter. If we are at this much utilization right now, where will we be maybe 3 quarters later? And then pushing everybody. It's not a one time thing कि आपने launch कर दिया and हो गया. You have to constantly keep pushing people to use it.
So you feel that communication has become better?
Yeah, much better, especially with AI. I think now to everything is automated. You don't even have to do a lot of manual communication anymore. The personalized recommendations which go to people, that hey, it seems like you and you can also link like one issue with another issue. Like if you get a lab test done and you are getting, say, a diabetes test done, and your HB1AC is high, then in that case you can be automatically recommended specific doctors which specialize in diabetes, which are near you, and there are so many options available. You can pick and choose. It is all automated, and that journey can be created. पहले क्या होता था, OPD अलग चलता है, AHC used to have fitness and wellness being separate. Now you can stitch everything together as an employee journey so that they understand what they need to do next, instead of keeping on looking for options all the time.
And what about to that how can organization connect well-being programs to overall employee experience in a measurable way? Because I see that some of it you have already answered
Yeah.
when you were telling me about the programs, but what about the numbers?
So, first and foremost, organizations need to look at holistic EX, holistic employee experience, and not at standalone programs. That is the first mistake most organizations do. That, and actually, it's not even a mistake. It's more like there is a different team in a company running well-being. There's a different team running OPD programs. There's a different team running rewards. There's a different team running learning and development, and they don't want to like step on each other's toes, right? So they're like, okay, let them run what it's their job. It's their job. But eventually, if you think about it, everybody's job becomes easier if you bring everything together, because because of these so many teams running so many programs, employees end up getting 20 apps. And this happened when I think we launched with one of the very large clients in our early days, 70,000 employees for rewards and recognition. And at that time, me and Saurabh used to go physically in corporates, in their cafeterias to talk to customers and take like feedback. So few employees were coming, they're like, are you my rewards? Are you my perks? Are you my help? Are you my, this, am I that? And they had like 8 or 9 apps. That is the first problem. I mean, because there's so many initiatives and different people are running it, there are so many apps, and then those apps don't talk to each other. Hence, employees have to download 9 apps, and nobody wants to do that. So the utilization automatically becomes low. So companies need to look at everything as a holistic employee experience problem and not a standalone problem. Like, moodometer and mental well-being are not two different things. They're exactly the same thing. They're linked to each other. Like, how employees are feeling and what's the pulse of the organization is automatically linked to your mental health. If every day I am putting in as my mood is bad, it should automatically link to your EAP provider, or it should link to your say mental wellness provider. If um, if you have just a chatbot, which is just a general chatbot, and on that chatbot, as an employee, if I am writing the words that I am suicidal, there should be a link to your EAP. It's not necessary that an employee will come to an EAP program and tell them. Everything needs to be interlinked together, and that's how you achieve holistic true well-being. So that's the first and foremost most important thing. And then one module also pushes the other, right? So one program helps drive usage for the other program. And secondly, I think generally beyond just running these programs, there should be a push on healthy habit formation. You can link healthy habit formation with rewards as well, that you can drive employees to do things like participate in step challenges or programs around drink so many glasses of water a day, eat so many fruits a day, etc., etc. General healthy habit formation programs, linking them with rewards, even though rewards might be perceived as a separate thing. Step challenge apps might be perceived as separate things. They're essentially the same. I mean, they're all coming down. And what is the end goal? End goal is to make your employees happier and healthier. So everything should come down to complete that end goal, and that's how you really get the right employee experience in a measurable way. And then you can link all of them together. Your ERGs, they run separately, they're actually linked to social well-being. Like, if I am part of a, say, ERG, which is maybe a network of women or a new mother support group, is directly linked to my social well-being and my mental well-being. Why is that looked at as a separate program? It's the same thing. So that entire mindset needs to change, and then you will start looking at, okay, your sentiment analysis to identify pulse is automatically linked to your mental well-being or well-being quotient. Your ERGs are also linked to your well-being quotient. Your healthy habit formation is linked to rewards, and that's how you start getting very measurable responses, instead of 5 teams coming and saying mere initiative ka itna hai, mere initiative ka itna hai. It needs to be a collated effort together.
So do you think that, like, you have removed that conflict and the confusion between, all the apps?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not something which came out of our own brain. Like, this is not our brainchild. This is just understanding the problems companies face after talking to so many customers. And luckily, touchwood, we've been blessed to have customers who've kind of, you know who are ready to take those plunges with us, because a lot of times nobody wants to be the first customer. But we've always had clients who've been like, this is a problem, can you help us solve this problem? It's okay, we will innovate with you, we will launch with you, and then it's your IP, you keep the IP, later sell it to 20 other clients, it's fine, but help me solve this problem. And because of finding all those problems, we've been able to stitch everything together in a end-to-end experiential program. Otherwise, if you think about it, why is a rewards and recognition program running surveys or mood meters or wellness or learning and development? It doesn't make any sense. But when you think of it from kind of a holistic view, it has to be everything in one place.
So feedback played a role, like, you've received the
Yeah,
feedback and then you've worked on it.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, Smriti, I've been, seeing that you've been talking a lot about AI and, agentic AI, how it's playing a role in rewards, recognition, and experience. Let's talk about that.
Hmm.
There's a growing talk about AI, agentic AI in HR. How are these technologies influencing rewards and recognition today? What do you feel?
So, I think first and foremost, let me talk about non-agentic related AI, right? Agent is a different beast altogether. So, when you're looking at AI, you also have generative AI, you can do things like nudges and triggers. The way we as Advantage has have approached this problem from a non-agentic standpoint is like in rewards and recognition, a lot of times managers don't know that, say, there is a nomination or approval window happening and
Hmm.
they're missing out on the bus, or they have so much of budget left over, the quarter is ending, or there are certain people in their team who have not been recognized for a while of course there is a way you can download a report, you can go through that data and then identify where you are and how much do you need to reach. Nudges are a quick way of ensuring that people don't have to do all of that, hard work. And the nudge tells you that, hey, your budget is expiring in a month, or you only have 30 days left, these are the topmost performers. And that data can be pulled in from a CRM, from an ERP, from a performance platform you're running. Everything can be linked together and integrated to give managers the right nudges and the right recommendations to actually reward. Nudges can also help for people to recognize other people beyond their general circle of influence. Like in an organization, I typically have my circle of influence, which is my team, my manager, and my juniors, right? But say, for example, I have met other team members who I gel well with. Like I remember in Microsoft, I had like 5 or 6 teams I used to gel well with. Like when I left Microsoft, I had 5 farewell parties because it was just like I gelled with so many people. So, but a lot of times when I used to give kudos to my colleagues, it would only be to my immediate team members. I would forget about those other team members who I interact with on a regular day to day basis. But AI can help you identify that. Like, for example, if somebody has wished me on my work anniversary, they're not in my circle of influence, and maybe their 5 year anniversary is coming up, AI can nudge me to maybe create a greeting card for them or write something nice for them. And then through generative AI can also help me write the citation in a better manner. A lot of times we don't recognize others because we don't know what to write, and that's a common problem with me also. Like if I have to recognize people, while I say a lot of words, but when I have to actually recognize people, I'm at a loss for words, because then I'm like, there are 6 people. How do I say the same thing to them in 6 different ways? So again, Gen AI helps you there in formulating those citations, and especially for people who find it hard to put their thoughts in words, then I can just talk specifics. I can give specifics to AI that I want to recognize them for their efforts in this project. They did XYZ really well. Can you write a nice message for me? And it helps me in creating those. AI
Kind of
also,
prompting you're talking
sorry,
about.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just saying that, kind of prompting you're talking about.
Yes, prompting what you're talking about, but making it sound better. Like
Yeah.
how, sometimes you're writing a LinkedIn post and you're like, this doesn't sound right. While I've put in what I want to write, this is not what I wanted to look like. And then AI comes to the rescue and they're like, this is how you can create it better. So it's like that. And I think AI can also help you with smart reporting. This is also a very big problem. Like if I'm an HR leader and
Mhm.
tomorrow my CEO comes and says, hey, in this business unit, who are the top 5 awarded people? He asked that one question. I will take 3 hours to get an answer to that, because I will go to the report, then download that particular BU's report, then put VLOOKUPs and whatnot to actually get that answer. I can literally copy that question to AI and say, in this business unit, who are the top 5 performers? And AI will pull that data out to you in 30 seconds. So it also saves you a lot of time in doing very smart reporting, which kind of brings me to my point around agentic. And this is where agentic will change the game, because you can now ask questions and get answers in seconds, if not minutes, to actually get the right answers without having to go through all of that effort. Like if I have a report, agentic can create an entire presentation out of it for me. I have to present it to my manager. Instead of sitting the whole night prepping for it, agentic can do it for me in like 20 minutes, right? So it saves you a lot of time. And the future is agentic, not just in HR, even outside HR. Like my ideology is that eventually there'll be a point where if I want to order food and I want to eat like maybe a paneer sandwich on a subway, I will just go to a delivery app. I will tell the agent I want to eat a paneer sub. And that's it. It'll get delivered to my house. I mean, I don't have to go through the whole concept of clicking on different workflows and then ordering that sandwich and that sandwich coming to me. That is what agentic does for you. So not only does it recommend what suits you, it will also kind of do the work for you, making it very very easy. A lot of times in organizations you have people who are not very well versed with technology, so they don't use the tools. They're like बहुत complicated है, हमें नहीं.
So do you feel that AI will understand you more than human? Because as it's just clicked in my mind when you said that, like, that paneer sandwich will deliver to you. That means that AI knows what actually you want and what your preferences are, what kind of restaurants you want. So do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
feel that that point will ever come that human, more than human, the AI will know your specifics, your choices?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in HR tech, of course, the most important impact where this would make is identifying employees who are in red, like employees who are actually disengaged, employees who are about to attrite. Because as a human, you might not identify that, but AI can come and tell you that this person, because of XYZ reason, their absenteeism is high of late. And you don't realize that, right? I mean, 3 4 months you don't identify that, okay, this person has stopped coming so much to work, or they're late all the time, they were never late before, or their performance is declining slowly, they were like a top performer earlier, or their sentiment analysis constantly says I am not happy. You can't stitch all those things together as a human being because you have 20,000 things to do. But AI can identify that for you and identify that red flag and tell you that this person, because of these 7 parameters, could be in the red, and it's time to have a conversation with them and check with them if they're okay. So that is huge. Like that's if as a founder I have that option, it's amazing, right? If I can retain people before they put down their papers, isn't that the best thing if I want to retain them?
Yeah, but then, like, it takes us down to the same question, like, which we are asking from the beginning, that is AI going to replace human, quickly, or you feel that, like, that human touch will always required in the system? What do you feel?
Yeah. So AI cannot replace humans eventually. AI will replace redundant jobs eventually, right? AI will replace the job of somebody identifying and stitching all these reports together to find out who are going to attrite. But AI cannot retain a person. It has to be the human manager who will retain the person. So I will not be retained because AI told me, no, no, it's a great job, stay. I will be retained because of how my manager made me feel. My manager might have used AI tools to kind of give me that appreciation and get, again, it's a means to an end, right? But the actual work, the empathy which comes out from my manager, that cannot be replaced by AI, at least today. I mean, maybe eventually, like I know this person in Japan or somewhere who married an AI by
Yes,
yeah.
there are a lot of stories coming in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will prefer AI over humans, maybe at some point of time, but at least not today. Today, AI cannot replicate human empathy, but I think eventually you will always need a human to make you feel like human, right? I mean, irrespective of whatever, you know that this is a technology, this is not a human being, so you won't be completely emotionally attached to it. Some people might be, but majority of us won't be.
Yeah, but the kind of companionship which is increasing through AI,
Hmm.
that sometimes, like, creep me out. That what is happening? Like, why people are looking for companions into it?
No, I think that is more of a psychological question than anything. And my best friend is a therapist, so I chat with her about this a lot. But I think it is not because of AI. It is just because of your personal inhibitions, that, and we're digressing from the topic, but I'll say this, that it's because you probably have a void in your life which a human is not able to fill, and you find that comfort in a technology, similar to how, a lot of people become gaming addicts or any sort of addiction for that matter, because you try to fill that void with a non-human being. But that does not mean that you can completely replace human beings there. So just digressing, but that's like a psychological thought process there.
So yeah, back to the point, back to the cause. How can AI help personalize rewards in a way that feels meaningful to employees across a diverse team and the cultures? What do you think?
So I think diversity also has completely changed in terms of definition post COVID, because earlier it was just people in a certain country or a geography. Right now everything is global, so diversity goes beyond countries, beyond geographies, beyond genders, beyond generations. I mean, cultural diversity is also very, very huge. And one, which is also why I say that one size does not fit all anymore.
Mhm.
There AI can play a very major role, because you can get very personalized recommendations of what works for you. Like, we live in a world where we advocate for choice, we tell that employees should have thousands of choices. But if I actually put 1,000 choices in front of you, you won't have the time or effort or energy to go through all the 1,000 choices. Your thought process will be, can you identify those choices which would be relevant to me, because I as a person like certain things, so these are more relevant for me. Can you recommend some to me? If I recommend naturally without using artificial intelligence to you, I will add my own bias on it, because I will say, okay, I like these 20 things, maybe you will like one of these. But AI will not do that. AI will identify maybe your searches, your past browsing history, your past redemption history. How do people in your city typically behave? How do people in your organization behave? Like, companies also have different cultures. Some companies have an extreme fitness culture, some companies have an extreme party culture, some companies are like have a bikers club and all of that. You also get influenced according to that, right? So depending on your past history, the people around you, what they've been redeeming, what you've been using, it will give very personalized recommendations. And then there are the cultural nuances also are taken care of. Like, the same company, somebody sitting in Chennai will have a different cultural preference than somebody sitting in, say, Calcutta, right? So it's a different, vast cultural difference also. But there might be similar preferences for the people in the same company in Calcutta, and for the same people in the same company, for different people in the same company in Chennai. So it will take care of those nuances and start giving you recommendations basis that. And then more and more you start using it, the more it understands you, the better it becomes in terms of recommendations, and more personalized to your interests as well.
That's fascinating. What about the AI sometimes raises concern about privacy and biases? What should organizations keep in mind, when using AI in people programs?
So, first, let me talk about privacy, then I'll talk about bias. So, privacy, especially in the GPT era, is becoming more and more important, because of two ways. One, how a particular platform or a tool uses your data, and second, how much data should the platform get from you, right? So, how much should it get from you by default is usually protected by different privacy acts of countries. Like, there is DPDPA act in India, there is GDPR in Europe. There are different acts which protect data gathering from different for different platforms without the consent of the user. With the consent of the user, then it's suppose a choice of the user as to what they want to actually feed into the AI, for the AI to actually be more relevant to you. Thanks to these policies, the de facto information which goes about me to a platform has already been taken care of. There has to be a consent before the app gets that data.
Mm.
Second is around, once I give the data, what AI chooses to do with that data. To do that, organizations need to ensure that whatever platforms you are deploying, if they say they have AI, that question needs to be asked. Is it in house, or are you using one of those, public GPT models? Because it's very easy to create any tool on, say, a stand alone public OpenAI platform itself.
Mhm.
It is easier to create it on the public platforms because you don't need to store server data on yourself. OpenAI has crazy amount of server data, and they'd be okay with people using it because we're already giving our data to ChatGPT every day, right? So but as an organization, you have to ensure that the platform provider you are using does not use these public, kind of open AI models. They have something internal, and that data is only stored with the parties with whom the contract is signed. And data accessibility also needs to be important, that the platform should not be able to have access to that data. It needs to be completely encrypted. No employee with your vendor partner should have access to that data as well. So that entire piece needs to be taken care of while you're deploying any platform which says AI. Just because they say AI does not mean that's safe to use, right? So that is something which companies need to look at. Secondly, now when I come to bias, um, I see AI just kind of doesn't create a bias. AI reflects our own biases, whatever we have when we are modeling a particular tool. So when I'm modeling a tool, if I have certain biases, they will automatically start reflecting in the AI. So I don't think AI by de facto has a bias. If I were to do the same thing without AI, that bias would still exist. So it is not a newly created bias. It is a bias which already exists in the system, and AI is enhancing that. So there are certain guardrails we can create when we are modeling AI to ensure that those biases are prevented. So there are two parts to the bias prevention. One is preemptive and the second is reactive. Preemptive is where I create these guardrails that, say, for example, in recognition, I can create guardrails that one manager cannot recognize one employee in their team more than X number of times over Y period of time. So that's like a simple way of kind of stopping bias, where you can create a structure. Same thing if that decision is being taken by an AI basis some performance data they are looking at, those guardrails can again be utilized to ensure that that bias does not come in there. Similarly, this is preemptive. Post-emptive is or reactive is where you can actually create better audits. So you can have like very regular audits where you can see that, okay, this is what by default the outcome should have been. This is what the outcome has come thanks to the AI. If you find biases in that, then you can again remodel it and ensure that it's an iterative cycle. You can ensure that it doesn't come. But yeah, it's not something which can be fixed in a day. It is iterative over time and needs a lot of audits, like it would be if you were having a human do it anyway. Just because it's faster doesn't mean it's completely efficient, but you can make it more efficient over time to kind of remove those biases.
Okay. So, I mean, like, you feel these, processes should be taken care. I mean, like, when you're using AI,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like that is in the practices, or like, the companies are still struggling to create these processes in the organizations.
I think most companies already, especially mid to large, already have some recognition processes they have created on their own. They have their own policies. Um, I think one way to test it is most organizations have some idea around which are the corner cases. So when you feed your model or your policy to the AI, also try out those 8, 9 corner cases by asking the agent those questions. What the AI responds is how you will identify whether it's completely fully modeled or is ready to be deployed to the employees or not. And then, of course, corner cases will keep coming, issues will keep coming, like with anything else, but then you can keep refining it over time.
True. So, what about agentic AI? Especially, how do you see it helping HR teams streamlining recognition and wellness programs by
Hmm.
2026? What do you feel
Hmm.
about that?
So the best thing about agentic AI, like I said, is you don't need to learn any workflow, right? A lot of programs and tools when you launch, there is so much of coaching, there is so much of learning, and so many workshops you have to do, so many managers you have to train to just use that platform. And it's it's foolish to assume everybody understood it in 2 or 3 trainings, right? I mean, a lot of people don't use it because they feel it's too complicated. When you look at, I mean, recognition is, of course, it takes maybe 4 or 5 training sessions max. But if you look at things like Salesforce, for example, there are companies created whose job it is to train and deploy and, kind of make people use those workflows because they are so complicated. Agentic completely removes that friction, and every workflow can be automatically run through a chat based mechanism, which is, I think, amazing. Like, you can just talk to somebody, like you talk to an agent like you're talking to a human being, and just get your work done. And it'll also like talk to you literally like a child. Okay, you want to do this, these are the 3 options, which option would you like? Okay, this is the option. You want to write a citation, here's a pre-written citation for you, would you like to edit it? So it's just very very easy to use because it's so workflow, kind of, the workflow is so pre-fit in the system that you just have to have a conversation with the agent and everything becomes chat based. Secondly, it's also easier for those employees who are not very technologically advanced, like blue collar workers, for example, or gray collar workers. They can talk to somebody in their vernacular language. They can talk to, by somebody I mean an agent, they can talk to an agent in their vernacular language and get their work done. Sorry. It's also very easy for managers to understand policies better, because a lot of times recognition policies are not just as simple as that I have a budget and I can award to whoever I want. Every company has different guardrails, different limits, different budgets, and managers have to usually go through those policy docs to understand what that award actually means. With the agent, I can just do that by asking a question, that how much am I allowed to award from this budget for this particular award and this particular BU. It becomes even more complicated when it's cross country. Like, I'm a manager sitting out of India, I have to award somebody in US, there might be different awards, different policies. Agent helps simplify that entire process without me going through documentation. And like I mentioned earlier, it's just better reporting also. No need to go through VLOOKUPs, etc. Just ask a question and you get the answer.
Nice. So, how can organizations balance, automated AI-driven recognition with genuine human connections?
So one misconception is that you can just use AI for everything and it'll automatically happen on its own. You have to use AI with genuine human empathy, and you need to add context to why you're doing what you're doing. Right? If I have to recognize my team and I just use standard AI generated messages, team is not stupid, they will understand it's a standard AI generated message. So as a leader, it is also my responsibility to make it more human and more contextual. I can use AI to enhance my message, but it needs to talk about why I'm recognizing, what is the purpose, what was the good thing I liked because of which I'm recognizing that particular employee, and kind of an encouragement message on top of it as to what I expect them to do in the future. And then AI can help put those words together, but it cannot be a replacement of me recognizing somebody else. I cannot just create a bot and say that, hey, every quarter just keep rewarding on my behalf, where I won't even open the tool. So that is not recognition. I mean, people will understand that you are just using AI without any empathy. So it is important to have that human connection to ensure that people are themselves doing the awarding and not just writing scripts and just doing everything automated. Secondly, to balance human connection, I think AI can also be used to identify those people who have not been recognized. And this is something which, as humans, it's hard for us to realize. Like, if I had 200 people reporting to me, physically, it is impossible or very, very hard for me to identify the set of people who maybe unknowingly I have missed out, but they've done a good job. So it can also help me identify those people on a regular basis so that it's more fair and a little more balanced. While, of course, some performers will always get more recognition, but nobody should be left out eventually if they're doing a decent job.
And what about ROI? Like, many companies struggle to measure the ROI of employee experience programs. What metrics should they focus on, in this
Hmm.
new year?
So there are different metrics. First is redemption rate, utilization rate. Like utilization rate is if you've given a budget to a manager, how much budget has actually been given to employees. So if a manager is not awarding further, then the whole purpose of that recognition doesn't happen. Redemption rate is now the manager has given the reward to the employee, but is the employee actually using the reward? So have they actually used the reward or not, or that money is just lying with them without being used? If utilization rate is low, and our average utilization rate benchmarking is around 85 to 90%. Our average redemption rate benchmarking is around 90 to 95%. So if your utilization is low, it means people are not rewarding. Then you need to identify why they're not rewarding. Maybe it's very complicated of a policy, maybe it has too many approvals. Like I had a client once who created 13 layer approval cycles. Nobody got rewarded because who will go through 13 layers of approvals, right? And then they changed it in a quarter to a 2 or 3 layer approval mechanism. So utilization rate helps you identify what is the gap of awarding and why people are not awarding. Redemption rate helps you identify, are my rewards exciting enough for people, and is my rewarding mechanism usable for people, right? If wherever I'm giving the reward, if it's very hard for me to redeem it, that could also impact your redemption rate. Because if you give enough choices to people, if you give them an easy way to use it, then why will people not use it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So these two are important metrics. Beyond these metrics, I think ESAT scores are good. And one thing about ESAT scores, like what organizations usually do is they wait for the whole year, and then end of the year they run a survey, and then they're like, okay, we got 91% ESAT. Next year, let's do 92% ESAT. And then next year, they again go to 90 or 91, and then the cycle resets, right? So, ESAT needs to be more like a target you need to achieve at the beginning of the year instead of waiting till the end of the year to see how we did. Beginning of the year, you tell that this year, last year we had 91%, this year we want to hit 93%. Do whatever it takes to achieve that number, and then align all your initiatives to achieve that number. Then there is a higher possibility of achieving that number, and that's where you start really taking feedback from people, acting on that feedback and ensuring that everybody meets their numbers. And even participation scores, I think for recognition, participation scores matter more around like, are people giving peer-to-peer appreciations like non-monetary badges to one another? Because monetary is purely on performance. But am I giving thank you cards? Am I giving greetings to others? Am I really involving myself in ERGs? If there's a wellness program, how many people participated in the stepathon? How many people actually kind of uh, linked their smartwatches or Apple Fit or Google Fit to their phones to track their steps? So those kind of participation benchmarking also becomes important. And general sentiment analysis, like what is the mood of the company, how people are feeling, is my sentiment analysis improving over every quarter, or is it declining every quarter? Are there seasonalities, like maybe if you have busy season during festive season, maybe my sentiment analysis goes down during that time because people are overworked and they're overwhelmed, and therefore they're more stressed out. And if you know there's a seasonality, can I do something about it? Can I do something to make their life easier during that particular period of time? And I think the gold standard is attrition cohort analysis. We started doing this, I think, 5 6 years ago, on our own data, where we identify the percentage of people who have been recognized and the percentage of people who have not been recognized. And this runs as three different cohorts. First is set of people who have gotten at least one monetary award versus people who have not gotten one monetary award. Set of people who have gotten at least one non-monetary versus this, and set of people who've gotten at least one monetary and non-monetary vis-a-vis who has not gotten any award at all. Is there a attrition difference between the two, and what is that difference across each cohort, so that we identify how much does monetary award move people, how much does non-monetary move people, and how much does both move people. And if that helps in increasing your retention, then why not create monetary awards which goes at least once to everybody in a year in some way or the other. So those kind of analysis also helps in creating the right benchmarking and identifying metrics for people.
Okay. So as companies plan, for the future, what should they prioritize to create an employee experience that attracts, engage, and retain, talent in 2026 and beyond? Because, I heard you saying about and talking about retention. So, what should they plan and prioritize?
So I think whatever they do in terms of employee experience, one, it's very important for it to be hyper personalized because one size does not fit all. Second, we talk about moments that matter, right? So while rewards and recognition is for maybe 80% or 70% of the company, there are some moments which come in every employee's life which matter, like the first day I joined, my first week in the company, uh, the day I complete 1 year, the day I complete 5 years, or say maybe I had a baby, or maybe I got married, or I got a promotion. All of these moments matter in an employee's life. These are the moments where people should be recognized irrespective of performance. So that also, I think, becomes very important to attract and to retain that talent, because then while performance is an motivator for me to get those specific awards, this is something I get just as a thank you, like my company really cares about me, which is why this is happening to me. And we talk about AI, right? So AI can be used for timely nudges to ensure that people get the right nudges at the right time to get the right outcome. It needs to be social. We spoke about that a little bit as well. That the more social it is in an organization, the more belonged I feel there. And when I'm switching a job, it's also more like maybe I might not get that recognition in my new job. Maybe they might not be as open about celebrating achievements as my current one is. So that becomes a very big factor in terms of people switching between jobs for a little bit of salary increment. Some people let it go because they feel that I might not get that much recognition in my next company as I'm getting here. So I will choose my mental peace over anything else. Flexibility is another, I think, priority which organizations should look at, because you don't want 20 apps. Let people choose, let apps talk to one another. There should be an integrated one platform experience for everybody. And lastly, whatever recognition programs you are running, there needs to be a linkage to your company core organizational values, right? You shouldn't be just running a program because your competitor is running it. It needs to be linked to your values, what you want to achieve as a company, your KRAs and your KPIs, so that everybody aligns together that towards that common goal, instead of just headless chickens. Okay, I am getting this award, but why? What does it do to the company? What is the objective? What is the purpose? What is the impact? So link it all together so that it feels more than a recognition. It feels like, okay, I'm adding value and I'm also growing with the organization.
So you feel that rewards can, you know, create more belongingness, or is just a materialistic thing? What do you think?
No, no, rewards is not a materialistic thing at all. If somebody's salary is, say, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, 5 lakhs an annum, a 1,000 rupee reward doesn't make any difference in their life. But why does that reward matter to them? It's not because of the money, or it's not because it's materialistic. It is primarily because of what that award made you feel. So it's about getting credit, it is about getting recognized, it is about uh, you know feeling that this company cares about my efforts. And belongingness, that's what it is, right? When you, even in relationships, right, when you're in a relationship with somebody and you feel they care about you, you feel like, okay, this is where I belong, this is the right relationship with me, for me. If you're in a relationship where you're the one who's doing all the work and the person next to you never appreciates you, you will eventually start feeling disengaged, and you will start feeling that, okay, this person does not give me appreciation. They might appreciate you, but they don't tell it to you, right? So I think it's important to actually recognize people, appreciate people, for them to feel that they belong in the organization.
That's great. So, Smriti, as we are going towards the end of the conversation, I would like to ask about your one of the advice which you would like to give to HR leaders who want to shift from transactional recognition to more human centric and lasting appreciation practices. What is your one advice?
Okay, so I think first and foremost, leaders really need to like walk their talk, because uh, a lot of times leaders create these amazing programs, they approve it, and then they never use it. Like they never recognize anybody in the entire year. Then automatically you're not using it yourself, but you expect your mid managers to run it. That message does not seep through properly, and people usually follow their leaders. And look at any organization, you talk to their leadership and you talk to the rest of the teams, you will see that the culture of the team is very similar to what the leaders behave like. If the leaders are very aggressive, the organization is very aggressive. If the leaders are if there's a lot of politics in the leadership, then there's a lot of politics in the organization. So whatever leaders do kind of seeps in through the organization. So they need to understand that their actions are directly proportional to actual impact in the organization, and whatever they're doing will actually end up happening. So they need to use it themselves. And overall, I think while managers are expected to appreciate all their team members, there needs to be an appreciation structure for the managers themselves as well. So kind of appreciate those people who appreciate other people, like recognize those people who care about recognition in the organization. That also adds to virality. And uh, I always say that HR always recognizes people who recognizes the HR. So it has to be, it just creates, it's infectious, honestly. The more you get recognized for what you want to do, the more you start doing it naturally. So that is my only 2 cents to leadership, that one, just be involved in the programs yourself. You should be the biggest user of the initiative you've launched. And second, you know pull those people up who pull other people up.
That's great. I mean, like, that's what we need in the corporate. Like, I see, that belongingness, that, pulling up other person is, still, way, behind, and people are actually going towards it.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a great advice. So Smriti, it was wonderful talking to you. I feel since, like, back then when I started in 2009, we never used to talk about the rewards, recognition. Like, we used to give, like, small things to people, and now we are working in an era, like, where people are actually looking forward to it.
Right.
Companies like you are doing a wonderful job to give them a platform, where they can go and they can work under similar, one umbrella, and get all the benefits, created for the employees. And it's very easy, and it's very fascinating, like, how you're using AI, through the whole thing. I mean, we see that, like, AI has been building up in the companies, but, like, for the rewards, I don't think so that people have, thought about, like, that it is going to come. So yeah, I mean, amazing work. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for, giving our users, that, awareness about the programs, how they can implement it, how it is, going to, give the impact in 2026. Wonderful, wonderful thoughts.
No, no, thank you so much, and really appreciate your time today. And I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
Same here. Actually, like, I have got a lot of insights about rewards. So yeah, wonderful chatting with you. Like, I would like to connect sometime later also. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you.